Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Schlein. I'm with the Maryland Secretary of State's Office. I'm the director of the Charities Legal Services Division. And got a good town hall here today. We're going to talk with the State Department of Assessments Taxation and the Comptroller as well to do this joint town hall about the different registration requirements through the lens of these various state agencies. I know it's one of the most frequent calls we get are people trying to find things not just with us but also with these other agencies, and that was kind of what led us down the path of doing this town hall with our fellow state agencies. It's a pretty popular one. You guys know, running a nonprofit, oftentimes a smaller volunteer organization, sometimes it's tougher to navigate through the various things you need to do, up front and then every year thereafter. So this is gonna, we're trying to help with that and get more information out there for folks so you can kind of understand what it is each of our agencies are doing as it relates to you, a charitable organization or a nonprofit organization. So before we get started, just a few ground rules here. Myself and my fellow state agencies are going to talk and do some presenting, and we'll hang on at the end to do a little Q&A. If you have a question, go ahead and throw it in the chat box. There is a chat here, you can throw it in there. All I really ask is if you're asking questions in the chat, try not to answer somebody's question in the chat. We'll try to run through those at the end as best as we can. And if for some reason we don't catch your question, you can always reach out to us offline, but we try to get everybody's questions here answered. So if you got a question, throw it in the chat. You might find that whatever your question is, we answer it along the way. Just in order of programming, we're going to go with assessments and taxation, then the Secretary of State's office, and then the Comptroller's office to bring us home. So we're going to run things in that order. So you might find your questions answered, and if it's not, throw it in that chat box, and we'll do our best to answer it at the end and try to avoid answering other people's questions, though. I've seen it over the years of doing these. Well-intentioned person sometimes tries to help out and give an answer, but it's not always the right answer. Leave us to answer the chat box questions. Try not to answer anybody else's. And then, like I said, at the end, we'll do some questions that appear, and we'll go from there. So a few other matters of housekeeping. Today's town hall is recorded. By joining the town hall, you have consented to the recording. The town hall is going to be posted. The recording of the town hall will be posted on our website. Usually it's up within about a week of the town hall, normally sooner, but usually within a week for sure. This town hall is provided for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be legal advice. Informational purposes only, not intended to be legal advice. And just ask that if you haven't already muted yourself, please do, so we don't get any feedback or background noise while everybody here presents for you to hear and learn, hopefully. And hopefully this is helpful, and thanks again for joining us, and big thanks to the folks you see here on the screen for joining us. Andre, Shanika, Martin, Charles, thank you very much for doing this. This is a generally well-anticipated town hall every year that folks look forward to, and the recordings get watched later. So we'll do it again, and we'll keep doing it as long as everybody sees that value in it. So thanks again, and I'm going to be quiet now, and I'm going to turn it over to Shanika. Shanika.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Or afternoon, rather.
Either way.
All right. So here at SDAT, our main job and responsibility is to essentially just form and register an entity. And so oftentimes people will kind of like come to us and ask us various questions about tax exempt status, but that isn't exactly, that's kind of like outside of our purview. So initially, when you're trying to set up a business, one of the things that you want to do is choose your business structure. I suggest you speak with an attorney, but if you're unable to speak with an attorney, of course, there's a wealth of knowledge on the internet that you can seek out. Just make sure that you're looking at um, credible sources. So just make sure it's like a state agency website that you're researching, or a federal website, or another website that's reputable, so that you're not getting misinformation. I would avoid a lot of the AI. In this instance, sometimes AI will kind of give our filers incorrect information, and they will come to us and say, well, AI told me, but if it's not a credible source, I do suggest that you research using either the law or some sort of state agency handout or form. So essentially, again, you want to research your business structure, review the forms that we have created. Our forms contain all of the essential requirements to start a non-stock corporation, and all of the required language for the IRS, so the dissolution language, and then as well as the charitable purpose part that is required for the IRS. One of the other things that you want to do, some of the things that's required on the forms are the Maryland resident agent, registered agent, resident agent. Maryland doesn't necessarily recognize the term registered agent, but it's essentially the same as a resident agent. So the resident agent should be over 18, a person that is a resident of Maryland, or a active Maryland LLC, corporation, limited partnership, or limited liability partnership. So those are the types of entities and people that can be your resident agent. Yes, if you're the incorporator, yes, you can serve as a resident agent as long as you reside in Maryland. Um, the next thing you'll want to do is review the instructions on the document when you get it. So we do have a um, a number that you can call if you happen to have questions. But the forms itself, I believe the instructions are written pretty well, and so generally most of the information that you need is on the form, and readily available and accessible. If you are opening a bank account, so prior ahead of time, you might want to ask your bank, what do they need to show proof that it's a legal entity already. Oftentimes that's a certified copy of the Articles of Incorporation, or a certificate of good standing for the Articles of Incorporation. However, once it's processed in our system, it's readily available online at Maryland Business Express. And so if you look down at the kind of like third area file formation document, that is the website to Maryland Business Express, and there you can again check the online status of any business at any time for free. But it's also recommended that you do create your own account with Maryland Business Express. Once you go in there, you're able to file your articles of incorporation for a tax exempt non-stock corporation, and also just a regular non-stock corporation if that was your desire. You can file those online. It says that the fastest processing time is 7 to 10 business days. That is for our expedited service. However, we do have a rush service where the articles of incorporation can be processed within, can be processed like overnight. So it's approved the same day, and then it shows up overnight in Maryland Business Express. When you are, I'll go ahead, that's fine. Just to go back to that one slide. So resubmissions and confirmations are provided by email if you do it online. So of course it's very much so recommended that if you can file online, to definitely do it that way. That way you don't have to wait for your acknowledgement to be paper mailed back to you. All right, so what is considered a non-stock corporation? So a non-stock corporation is a corporation that does not have any authority to issue capital stock or has shareholders. Essentially, what that means is you're not going to be able to issue any shares of stock. So it's nothing. So typically when people think of corporation, they think of shareholders, they think of, selling their various stocks. So with a tax-exempt non-stock corporation, there is no stock to essentially, there are no owners in that sense. Special types of corporations. So we have on our website, those are the three different types of non-stock corporations that we have forms available for. So articles of incorporation for a non-stock corporation. So that's just a corporation that has agreed not to issue any capital stock. So essentially it's a not-for-profit entity. However, if you are just filing for a non-stock corporation, that means that there is really no intent to obtain tax exempt status at that time. And so on that form and document, the required IRS language is not included. Articles of incorporation for a tax exempt non-stock corporation. So like I kind of alluded to before, this one has the required language for dissolution and the purposes in order to obtain IRS tax exempt status. With a tax exempt non-stock corporation, it is charged an additional $50, and that's for a nonprofit development center program. And so we are legally required to charge that by Maryland state law. The next type of non-stock corporation would be the religious corporation, generally known as a church or mosque, basically a religious institution. And with that, the requirements are they're different than the rest of the corporations because it is a religious corporation. So with those, one special thing to note is that the purpose must include forming a congregation or place of worship. But also in addition to that, there are requirements for like the number of trustees that must be included. So there must be 4 trustees. You must include the plan of the church, which should include how trustees are elected, who is able to elect trustees, just very specific information about the people that are going to run the church, which are the trustees. With Maryland state law, if you are forming any type of corporation except for a religious corporation, you must include the name corporation, incorporation, corporation incorporated, limited, or any of its abbreviations such as Inc., Corp., Limited, LTD, etc. Again, as I stated, religious corporations are not required to include a corporate status in its name. You will often hear us say a tail. So that's what we mean when we say a tail. It's just that corporate ending to indicate that it's a corporation and to indicate that corporate status in its name. With your addresses, so the principal office address and the resident agent address, also the principal place of worship, if we're talking about a church, it must be located in Maryland. So it has to be a physical address. So an address where you can, someone could essentially be able to serve documents, the principal place of office or the principal place of worship. That should be where the business records are held for the most part. It does not have to be the same address as a resident agent, but it may be the same address as the resident agent. They do not have to be 2 different addresses as long as they are acceptable. No P.O. box addresses, no shipping locations. What we often see more frequently is like a staple store that someone tries to use as a principal office address, a P.O. box, or just a virtual mailbox. So it's a virtual mailbox is really a service that's provided, but there is no actual physical address for people to come in and receive services. Once the entity is created, it's in our system, you're good to go. We've processed the articles of incorporation. Then you at that time you are issued a department ID number. It is a unique number that is specific to each entity, and so with that, you kind of want to come to familiarity with it because it will often be referenced when you're dealing with SDAT and business with SDAT, and it's a good number to kind of have handy and remember. Um, in the case of corporations, it will likely start with a D number for a domestic corporation. And so, yeah, that's it. Go ahead. All right, so these are our various forms. Again, I'm not sure if you guys are able to kind of see it with the font that's on there, but that's what they look like. They are pretty simple. Essentially, you're just filling in names and blanks and addresses and making sure that everything is signed properly. So around last year, we did move from 301 Preston Street. We are now at 700 East Pratt Street, located on the corner of Pratt Street and Marketplace, or not really on the corner, but located our main cross streets are Marketplace and Pratt Street. Our public area, we do have where you can come in if you need assistance right away. That one is located at 123 Marketplace, and that's going to be in Baltimore, Maryland, 21202. And to come in person, there is the link for you to go ahead and make your appointment. We do recommend an appointment, but however, generally speaking, if you don't make an appointment and you come in and we're able to see you, we try not to turn people away. If you've had a previous nonstock corporation and it has been forfeited, let's say because you didn't pay or you did not file, rather, your 2000 annual report. With that, if you wanted to revive that specific entity rather than creating another one, what you are able to do is essentially, if you file online, you would not have to file all past due annual reports, which are required for other business corporations and entities when they are attempting to revive. You are able to file the 7 most recently due annual reports and the articles of revival if everything is filed online. If everything is not filed online, you will be required to file all of the past due annual reports. We do have articles of conversion that are now available. Articles of conversion are used when a business wants to basically kind of transfer its form in a sense. So articles of conversion are used when an LLC wants to become a corporation, when a corporation from, let's say, Washington, D.C., now wants to become a Maryland corporation. They would use articles of conversion. And it's used, let's say you want to transfer your Maryland corporation to another state. You would use articles of conversion. So the document is basically used when you're changing the form of your business in any kind of way. Just a quick heads up, with your articles of conversion, if you have an LLC and you want to become a tax exempt non-stock corporation, there are generally 3 different documents that are required. Maryland law does not permit a LLC to convert directly into a non-stock corporation. So essentially what has to happen is that you complete articles of conversion, and then after that time, you create your formation document to create your stock corporation, and then from there, you would need to amend it to be a tax exempt non-stock corporation or whatever other form you would like it to take on. That's it.
Thanks,
Martin,
Shanika.
you're up.
Appreciate it, Martin. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, now once you have established your corporation, then you required to file an annual report, a Form 1 annual report / personal property return every year. The annual report is required every year. The business personal property section would depend on whether you have personal property or not, business personal property. And this is covered under Tax Article 11-101. You can go for it, yeah. And beginning in 2022, the state legislation passed a law which would exempt personal property if the total cost of the property is less than $20,000, and that's statewide. So if you had 5 locations and you had $5,000 worth of property in each location, that's $25,000. You would have to report all the property. If you had $19,999, you would just file the annual report, and there'll be a question on the return that's where you state that you have less than 20,000. If you have more than 20, then you must also submit the business personal property return. And then if you have over 20, we do have you can go on, Mike. If you do have over 20, we do offer a charitable or educational exemption from the personal property. You would still have to file the annual report, but your property would be exempt. And since the new law was passed, the exemptions have gone down pretty much because it's a lot of small nonprofits do not have more than 20,000. So there's nothing to exempt. As you can see, this year so far, we've only had 10 submitted. Previous years prior to the law, they were between like 75 and 100. Now they're down to about 20 per year. And there's an application that we'll see shortly that you would file. And once you're approved, you would have the exemption for as long as you're operating and conducting the same operation. As long as you were doing the charitable or educational work, your assets, you wouldn't have to file another application for as long as you're operating. And then these are links to get the application. You would click on there and it's like a 3 or 4 page application, and you could submit it to that email address right there, the SDAT.ppaudit@maryland.gov. You will get a confirmation email. And right now we only have about 2 people that review them. So sometimes they take a little while, but we would get back to you and ask for more information, or we would say you're exempt. You would get the exemption approval letter. And then you would be, like I said, that exemption would be good for the lifetime of the business. And the entity must be in good standing to be granted the exemption. So if it's forfeited or they haven't filed their annual report for a year and they're not in good standing, they would have to file that, revive, or get back in good standing before we could give you the exemption. And this is the copy of the charitable application. Basically, you need to describe your type of business, your type of expenditures, the client served. We would review that and then make a determination, and we may require more information, but we would get back to you on that. And this is your real property could also be exempt, and this would be an application that you would file in the county that the business is operating in. So each county on the one side has the email address. So if you're in Baltimore City, you would send it to their office. If you're in Charles County, you would fill out that application, email to them, and that could exempt your real property, which is handled by SDAT, but each county has their own office that deals with the real property. And that's just some links to the exemptions. And I think that's about it for SDAT.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Thanks, Shanika and Martin again. One quick question I did get asked in the chat. I think you answered it right before they asked it. The exemption with SDAT has to do with the personal property tax, not the annual report, right? You can't get an exemption from the annual report,
Yes.
just the
Yes.
personal property tax.
Yes, it's only the business personal property. The annual report has to be filed every year, and basically the annual report will be the name of the company, the mailing address, the department ID number, and you will list the officers and directors, which is public information. But that has to be filed every year, whether you have the exemption or not.
Thank you. Appreciate you clarifying that. Thanks again for joining us, everybody. Again, I'm Mike Schlein. I'm going to talk about the Secretary of State's office and charitable solicitation registration, not to be confused with everything that SDAT just covered. This is a different thing for different reasons. You're going to register with us if you're a charitable organization that solicits contributions in the state of Maryland. So whether you're located in Maryland and soliciting anywhere, if you're located in Maryland, you're soliciting here or anywhere, including just online, or if you're an organization that's located out of state but solicits Marylanders for charitable contributions, that's why you're going to end up coming to us. The law that regulates this is the Maryland Solicitations Act. It's found in the Business Regulation Article, Title VI of the Business Regulation Article in the Annotated Code of Maryland, and also regulations found in the Code of Maryland Regulations at that title, subtitle and chapter, I should say, title, subtitle, and chapter. When do I have to register? This is one of the bigger things to know. If you don't have to register with us, don't. But if you need to register, get it done, right? You shall register and receive a registration letter from us before the charitable organization solicits charitable contributions in Maryland, has charitable contributions solicited on its behalf in Maryland, or solicits charitable contributions outside of Maryland if the organization is in Maryland. So these are the three reasons you would need to register your charitable organization with us if you're out there soliciting charitable contributions. If you're not soliciting charitable contributions, you don't need to file with us. There's many 501c3s, I don't know how many, or what percentage of the whole it is, that they don't solicit, and therefore they don't register with us. If your organization has a donate button on its website and it's located in Maryland, it must register, even if the only solicitation done is through the website or other online soliciting like social media, things like that. If you're soliciting online, social media, website, etc., and you're located in Maryland, that is deemed to be soliciting in Maryland. Why? Well, you're located in Maryland and you're soliciting anywhere, right? So you're soliciting in cyberspace while being located in Maryland. What's a charitable contribution? This is another very important question to answer. Charitable contribution is many things, but generally it's a contribution made to the organization on the representation that it will be used for a charitable purpose. You see in the second bullet point there are many things. I'm going to focus on the money and property aspect to this. Most folks give money or stuff. And if you're out there soliciting charitable contributions of money or stuff, then that's soliciting a contribution. If you get a donation of stuff, say maybe a shirt or a couch, lamp, whatever it is, that stuff has a value, and the value of that is counted towards your charitable contribution. So whether it's money or property, those, and focus on the two big things we see, they count as contributions, and those contributions, the value of those contributions, whether it's money or property, counts towards the filing requirements under the Maryland Solicitations Act. So every now and then someone will reach out and say, I only get used clothing. It's all I solicit. Well, you still have to register. The value of that clothing you receive is the value of the contributions you received, and that's the filing threshold upon which your registration requirements will be determined. What is not a contribution? Sometimes what a contribution does not include is just as important as what it is. An unsolicited gift. under our law is not a contribution. Government grants or government money, not a charitable contribution. And I'm going to go back to that in a second. Membership assessments, dues and fines, not a contribution. Payment for property sold or services rendered. You pay somebody for a property that they sell you or a service that they render to you is not a contribution. And the last bullet point, public safety contribution, think donation to fire departments, for the purposes of the Maryland Solicitations Act, that public safety contribution is not a charitable contribution. The law, even though many public safety organizations are charitable, C3 or 4 or something to that effect, they have different requirements under the law than a regular run-of-the-mill charitable organization. Going back to the government grants and government money bullet point, again, just one of the bigger misconceptions we see, government money, not a contribution. It does not count towards charitable contributions. It does not count towards an auditor review threshold. It does not count towards registration. Federal, state, local, county, municipal, however you want to splice it up, government money doesn't count, no matter what branch of government it's from, no matter what level of government it's from. Government money does not count. What's a charitable solicitation? The last definition to kind of drive the point home. Most folks, when you think charitable solicitation, think, oh, somebody called me or sent me a letter asking me to give, or maybe get an email seeking for a donation. Well, it's a lot of things. It is all of those that I just mentioned, and it's a lot more. I'm not going to read off the entire slide here, but take a peek as I chat for a minute. It's a lot of different stuff. It is those basic asks that we're all familiar with, the traditional phone call or letter, along with the traditional, at this point, email solicitation, social media ask, all those things are charitable solicitations. Asking for donations is a solicitation. The thing that a lot of folks kind of miss on in the Maryland Solicitations Act is that certain other things, you may, and I'm going to draw the distinction here between what most folks are very familiar with, which is it a tax-deductible contribution, or did I pay them for something? That federal standard doesn't matter when we're talking about the Maryland Solicitations Act. The Maryland Solicitations Act is setting out its own definitions and standards under the law for the purpose of solicitation registration and the filing requirements thereof. So the sale of or offer or attempt to sell something like an admission or a raffle ticket or some other tangible item, a subscription, a chance, which is basically a raffle ticket, all those things that you might try to sell, if that sale is done in connection with one of the following things, it's a solicitation. And the money received from that counts towards total contribution. So even though it may not have been a tax-deductible contribution that you received, the revenue from that fundraising event still counts towards the filing requirements under the Maryland Solicitations Act. So if you're using the name of the organization expressly or implicitly to induce a purchase, that's a charitable solicitation. An appeal being made for contributions. Oh, buy this stuff from us and donate to us as well, or it'll help us, raise money, all that type of stuff, right? Or a statement being made that some or all the proceeds from a sale are to be used for a charitable purpose. Those are all charitable solicitations under the Maryland Solicitations Act. And the revenue derived from those activities all count towards the threshold for registering as a charitable organization, which will cover those thresholds and the requirements here on the next few slides. But all those things are charitable solicitations. Think of your fundraising event, right? We're in Maryland, so we're going to have a crab feast to raise money for our charitable organization, and we're selling tickets, and you buy the tickets to come to our crab feast to help us raise money. That revenue from that fundraising event the gross amount of that revenue, not even the net, the gross amount of that revenue from that fundraising event counts towards your threshold for charitable contributions received in a fiscal year, which means it counts towards the registration requirements. If anybody's ever looked at our instructions online and wondered, why do they count lines 8A and 9A from page 9, the statement of revenue of a 990? This right here is why. Those fundraising events, charitable gaming events, people come to that event to support the organization, right? I'll go catch my own or buy my own crabs, but I'm coming to this crab feast to help raise money for the organization. Going to a bull roast, same thing. I'm going to come to the bull roast and feed myself, but I'm coming here instead of going to wherever because it's helping a charitable organization. It's helping them raise money. So the gross revenue from those fundraising events or charitable gaming events counts towards the threshold. And this definition of the law is why. We do have online registration available through One Stop. I'm not going to get into it too deep here. One of our earlier just Secretary of State only town halls this year was a live demo of the One Stop system, how to file a new registration, how to file a renewal of registration. If you're ever kind of lost and you want to take a look at that and see how we navigate it through, take a peek at that town hall. It'll show you how to do it. And what's fun is we hit a few roadblocks that people encounter and then work through them while on that. So it's there to be seen. It's on our website. I'll throw the link in the chat box later on to where our town halls are all Secretary of State specific ones are all posted. But you can file online. I encourage you to file online. One nice thing about filing online is you never have to worry about whether it got here. It's in the system, and you can see it's in the system the moment you submit it. Communications these days are coming, the renewal reminders, compliance letters after you successfully complete a registration or an annual registration. They're all being sent by email through that system to the email address of record. So make sure you got good contact information, in particular, a good email address that you're actually checking to see that you got that. Because if we have a question or problem with that online filing, you're also getting an email that says that and tells you, what to go in and fix. So make sure you're getting those emails and checking those emails, and it's actually an email address that you're going to read. We get a lot of info apps, and it's hard to find people there sometimes. That's great if you have multiple people checking, but if you're not looking at that email address regularly, you may want to give us one somebody's actually using. If the organization owes part of an annual registration from a prior year, we may end up telling you, hey, let's go offline outside of the system to resolve that partial filing from a prior year, mostly because we're trying to avoid double payment. If you've mailed things into us previously and we've answered them or not answered them, the system doesn't know that you mailed something to us until we process it. And then when we process it, the system knows that you mailed it to us because we processed it and acted within the system. So keep that in mind. Accessing One Stop, there's a few different bullets here to talk about. If you have a charity, if you learn anything else from this time I'm talking here, if you're unsure of something, DLCharity_SOS@maryland.gov, DLCharity_SOS@maryland.gov. One of our charity officers is checking that email on the regular every day, and we're responding to as many emails as possible every day. And if you don't get a response, within a day, probably have one within 2 days. Sometimes it takes a little longer than we like, but those tend to be busier periods, which we're coming up to right now. November, December, a lot of folks are filing. May and June, a lot of folks are filing. So if you're reaching out to us on November 15th, because something is due on November 15th, a few hundred other people are as well. We'll get several thousand annual registrations over November and another several thousand over December. So it gets pretty busy at that time of the year. So if you're reaching out during the busier times, have some patience, please, and we'll get back to you. But accessing One Stop, claiming your record, setting up your account and profile and all. There's video guides and user guides for how to set up your account on our website. that link right there, the charity /pages/default, that's the main charity page on our website. If you forget all that, just go to sos.maryland.gov, sos.maryland.gov, and then click on the charity icon on the home page, and it'll take you right to this link as well. But there's user guides there that'll walk you through the step-by-step. The one thing I do want to point out here, kind of going through some tips before I cover these particular tips, make sure you're using the email address of record. The system knows who the account holder is because we tell it whatever the email address of record is. If you're logging in with different email addresses to that profile or trying to create profiles under email addresses that do not have access to the system, you're going to go in and set something up, but it's not going to be able to do anything. So, you know, make sure you're signing in with the right email address. And people always get a little like, my God, of course I'm logging in with the right email address. And I've done screen shares with folks in the past, and you look at the email address they're using to log in, and it is not at all the email address of record, even though I'm reading it off to them and they're swearing it is, and I'm looking at it with my eyes and it's not. So double check that before you log in. Some folks, you know, you have your web browsers defaulted to like auto-populated email address, and it may not be the right one. So be aware of that when you're trying to access the system. The forms online, they're really built to ask for everything you need to submit based on your organization's charitable contribution amount. So when you go through the form, it's going to ask you a series of questions up front about whether you file a 990 or 990 EZ or 990 PF or 990N or none of the above. Make sure you check the right one because it's going to ask you to plug in some data from, you know, if you're filing a 990, 990 EZ or 990 PF, it's going to ask you to plug in some data from some specific lines on the 990. If you're filing a 990N or none of those 990s, it's going to ask you to plug in your contributions for the year you're reporting. And it's going to ask you a few other questions up front. And based on those first 3, 4, 5 questions, it's going to know what you need to submit, and it's going to ask specifically for that. You know, the system's going to, if you plug in your right data from your 990, as long as you plug in the right data from your 990, it's going to know what your contributions are, and it's going to be able to calculate what your registration fee is, and it's going to ask for exactly that. It's going to know whether or not you're at a level where you need a financial review or audit because your contributions are at such a level that requires it. It's going to know, based on the renewal date at the top of the form, whether or not you need a late fee is due. If it's built to ask for exactly what is needed based on what the system knows. If you're ever looking at a renewal date at the top of the form and saying, wait a second, it says I'm a year old and I'm much more current than that, reach out to us and ask us, check in with us. Don't just kind of blindly do it and pay a late fee if you don't owe one. If you think we're wrong, reach out and let us know, hey, I see something that doesn't look right. Can you tell me what's going on? And you know, we can resolve it. We'd rather you file it and be done after one filing rather than having to send it back or play tag or refund money. If you're submitting annual registrations for multiple years and you owe a late fee, don't double pay the late fee. You only owe one late fee. There's a late fee waiver request option on the forms where you can explain that. What are the actual requirements here? We're going to go through the initial and the annual and the under 25s before I turn it over to the comptroller. These things: registration form, copy of your articles or bylaws or other governing instrument, IRS tax documentation confirming tax exempt status. If you're a 501c3, we want to see a copy of that IRS tax determination letter that verifies that. One of the biggest mix-ups that people do when they file online is they send us an EIN letter, which is just the letter from the IRS that says, here's your 9-digit EIN. That's not the IRS tax determination letter. The IRS tax determination letter is the one that confirms you have 501c3 or 501c whatever status it is. That's what we're looking for. Whatever your financial report is, whether it's a 990 or 990 EZ, or you got to do the state form COF 85. Some of these things are threshold based. Contributions of at least $300,000 but less than $750,000 require a financial review. $750,000 plus requires an audit. Copies of contracts, if you have paid fundraisers, they are required to be submitted to us. If you're affiliated with a state agency, everybody asks what that is. A couple quick examples. Think, University of Maryland Foundation. It's an independent nonprofit, but it's set up to further the mission of a state agency. Think Friends of the Park, like a state park, not a county park, but a Friends of a State Park, right? They're established to further the mission of the state park program, which is a state government agency. And then a registration fee. If you're over $25,000 a year, you're paying somewhere between $50 and $300. It's threshold based, so the more contributions, the more the filing requirements, the more the fee. And then annually, you're going to pretty much do the same thing every year. You're going to file the same stuff every year. If you're doing it online, the nice thing is once you filed one annual report in the online system, you go in to do the next form. It's pretty much, most of the contact info, the board members, they're all still there. All you got to do is update the information and attach the new financials, right? And plug in the new, the new fiscal year and the new data from the 990, that type of stuff. So the annual report is due within 10.5 months of the organization's fiscal year's end. So if you are an organization that's a fiscal year that ends in December, your filing is due by November 15th, 10.5 months after the fiscal year ends. So a lot of charities have a December fiscal year end. A lot of them are going to have a filing due by November 15th. Now that's the due date. You can file early. You can file as early as you want. We love it early. If you want to give it to us way in advance, you can. You don't have to wait till November 15th. If your stuff is done now and you're ready to file, go file. Don't wait till November 15th. You'll be one of several thousand rather than one of a few dozen every day that we're getting at the moment. So, if you can file early, you file early. Really, once your fiscal year ends, you could theoretically file the next day after your fiscal year ends. So you got a long window there to file on time. All the requirements are the same as the prior page. The thresholds for reviews and audits, whether or not you got fundraising contracts, affiliated with a state agency, registration fees annually, $50 to $300. And then if you're under $25,000, you don't have to do the full registration, but you still have to file with us annually. And you're going to file something called an exempt organization fundraising notice form. And this form, if you go into the online renewal form and you answer the first few questions and you're reporting less than $25,000 in contributions and you don't have a paid fundraiser or professional solicitor, you answer that series of questions, it's going to automatically take you to this exempt organization fundraising notice form. The form is going to know, oh, they're under 25,000 based on what they provided, and it's going to take you down the path of this form automatically. And if you're under $25,000, you don't owe a fee, and it's not going to ask you for one. So follow that, the prompts, do the form in order, especially those first several questions, and it'll take you down the right path as long as you plugged in the data correctly at the beginning to accurately tell the system where you're at. It's going to know where to take you. It's just my contact information real quick before I pass it along to Andres and the Comptroller's office. I'm going to slide back into the chat here too and try to answer some of the questions that have been placed in the chat here while I was talking. So thanks again, everybody. Andres, it's your turn.
Thank you, Michael, and good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin with this presentation, I see some questions related to sales and use tax exemptions and all of that. So we're going to be addressing that through this presentation. If you have a follow-up question, you definitely can put it in the chat. But if you don't have the question right now, and that comes up later, you can certainly send us an email directly, and we can answer those to you. I will provide the email on the chat after this presentation so that you can reach out to us at any time. Let's just start right on since we have a few minutes here. So the sales and use tax exemption certificate is the one the Comptroller of Maryland issued to certain nonprofit organizations that are qualified to receive one as long as they apply for one. So this certificate is renewed every 5 years. As you can see, there is a list there of nonprofit organizations that we normally provide the certificates to. So if you qualified under those nonprofit organizations, more likely you could apply for that exemption. This exemption, by the way, is for sales and use tax only. So for other type of exemption on the controllers is addressed differently, but for the purpose of this presentation, we're talking about the sales and use tax. If you have a question related to other tax exemption, reach out to us with the email that I'm going to be providing so that we can answer that separately. All right, so the next page, we're talking about the law, why this exemption certificate is come about, and by law, we provide that a certificate to you in only one original copy that was sent to you. And usually it's for those nonprofit organizations that are physically located in the state of Maryland, or they are located in the adjacent jurisdictions. And as you can see, there are only 4 or 5 states in there that they can apply also. We call them the neighboring states. So that's part of that. The certificate that we issue to the nonprofit is for regular nonprofit is issued on a green ink, and it will show the expiration date on it. So September 30th of 2027 is going to be good until, and then the renewal process starts after that. I just wanted to say that any transaction that you do with the state of or the Comptroller of Maryland is there's no fee for it. So all the services here that we provide is totally free to apply for any of those exemptions, in this case for the sales and use tax. So for those nonprofit organizations that are governmental entity, we issue that on a red ink card, and it does not have an expiration date. They can hold on to that forever, or at least for the life of the nonprofit. This exemption certificate is important. I see some of the questions talking about that, they're selling items for the nonprofit and collect the money, but the money is invested back to the nonprofit for the work. So that particular one, if you're paying sales tax, you should apply for the exemption so that you can have purchase those items or those tangible items tax-free, as long as those tangible personal property that you're buying for your nonprofit is directly invested into the nonprofit to carry the work that they do. That includes equipment, they include supplies, and so on. Now, if you are selling an item or product in your nonprofit and you're collecting the money for that sale to put it back or to invest it into your nonprofit, those are not exempted. Those are exempt. I'm sorry. You don't have to pay sales tax for that, or file a form to pay sales tax, or register to pay sales tax, because of that sales tax. Essentially guarantees you that you're using the money towards the work that the nonprofit does. So how to apply for this certificate? On the next page, you'll see the process to apply. We highly recommend that this application is done through an electronic side, and we have a Maryland Tax Connect portal. In there, there is a guide step by step where it shows how to apply for this sales and use tax exemption. If for any reason you have no access to our Maryland Tax Connect portal, you can call the Taxpayer Services Division or send us an email, and we can provide you a copy of the paper application that you could fill out and send it to us to the address that is listed there. Just to remind you that the paper application that comes in via mail, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to process. So we highly encourage you to do the process online because it's faster and it goes into the system very quickly, and we can review it faster. So within 3 to 4 weeks, you will get your certificate. Now, the generally required documents for the application once you go to the portal Most of those documents, you already have it as the previous agency has required, like the Internal Revenue Code, Internal Revenue Determination Letter, the Article of Incorporation, the bylaws, and all those documentation. You already have that. So that's part of your document that you're going to be provided. Michael, if you can switch to the next slide so they can see the list of documents. There you go. So those are the list of documents that we require for you to upload on the Maryland Tax Connect portal, or to attach to the paper application that you can send it to us for the review. If you are a nonprofit organization that is located here in Maryland, we need a letter of good standing through the Maryland Department of Assessments Taxation. That is easily can be obtained online, and you don't have to call them directly. You can go online and pull that information and provide that to us. For those who are located on the adjacent jurisdictions, we need to have a letter from those jurisdictions stating that you are in good standing for that state. Now, on the instructions, there are other documentation, very specific documentation, but that is mostly for a religious organization that we had extra few steps to get the certification granted. So that's basically what it is, the self-use tax exemption certificate process. Now, how can you apply these in Maryland Tax Connect? Once you go to Maryland Maryland Comptroller of Maryland.gov, on that site, you can click the link. The link is located at the top right corner. That link of the Maryland Tax Connect portal. Once you click in there, there is a drop-down list. I think if you do next on the next slides, Michael, thank you. There is the homepage portal that you can see. You're going to be selecting the very last one on the right. There is highlighted in red there, the Maryland Self-Use Tax Exemption Certificate application. So you click on that link and it takes you right to it. So once you get in there on that application, on the next page, you're going to follow the prompt, obviously, and there is one after that where it shows the portal term of use, which we highly recommend to agree to it and to move forward. Once you do that, you're going to enter your personal data. And when I said personal data, I mean the authorized officers of the nonprofit that's filling this form out, they need to provide those information. If for any reason a third party is doing this application for you, make sure you have a power of attorney, which is the form 548, to be part for, to upload into this application so we can see that the person filling it out is being authorized by you. Once you fill out all that information in there, the next page will show you the demographic information, and basically we ask you a few questions about the nonprofit, the federal ID number, and all those stuff in there. You just follow the prompt to the next page, and then there are a few questions in regards to the self-use tax exemption. Answer those questions the best you can. On the next slide, Michael, you can see there. So on those questions, answer those questions the best you can. At the bottom, you can see there's a Schedule A, Schedule B, C, and so on. So those are the documents you need to be uploading when you follow this online. You check those documents that you have in front of you and ready to upload when the time comes to upload the next page. So the next one, you verify that information that you have it there and proceed to upload those documents. Make sure it's those documents that we are asking for. The next one, we're talking about authorized officers. We require at least 2 officers of the nonprofit to be provided here, and that includes the full name, social security number, and it has to be full social security number, since they are responsible for the taxes that are not being collected because of the exemption, and the address and phone number and all that kind of stuff. As I mentioned earlier, if you have a third party filling out this on your behalf, attach the form 548, which is the power of attorney. The next page, you'll see that part, that checkbox. You check that, fill the information out, and click next. And that takes you to the next page. Will take you to the summary page. Review that summary page to make sure that your information is correct. If everything looks good, then click continue, and that will give you your page of the authorized taxpayer signature. And then on the next page, you'll see verbiage at the bottom, which is telling you the open knowledge of the possible penalty and being incurred. I acknowledge, blah blah blah, whatever that says there. You agree with that statement. You're signing on behalf of the nonprofit to submit this application, and click yes, and your application is being submitted, and you'll get a confirmation number, which is that FR number there. Keep that number handy when you communicate with us for whatever reason and related to the status of your application. Provide that number. That's the only number that we're going to be asking, and for us to retrieve your application, to find your application, to process your application, and everything else, or any question that you may have regarding to this application. I'd like to take this moment to address two questions. One was from Janet regarding if she was required to file sales and use tax. She's been a 501c4. But they don't have a SUTEC certificate. So I would highly recommend for you to apply for it. Otherwise, you will be continuing to pay taxes on things that you buy and filing sales and use tax and things that you sell if you don't have this exemption. There was another question for Bruce. He mentioned that they do sell items, but the items is part of the nonprofit mission, and so they do not collect taxes. That is fine as long as you have the exemption with you. You don't need to open a sales and use tax account with the Comptroller's office to pay sales and use tax if you are exempt to paying it. So you cannot have two accounts, one for sales and use tax and one for sales and use tax exemption. You can only have one. So if you are exempt, if you qualify for the exemption and you've been granted, so that's the only number that you're going to be using for buying, selling, especially selling, as long as those profit or those proceeds goes back into the mission of the nonprofit. I think I covered pretty much everything here, but if you have further questions regarding anything related to the sales and use tax exemption, please send us an email to, let me just put it on the chat, SUTEC@marylandtaxes.gov, and we'll be happy to answer any questions and guidance, even if you have issues in applying online, whatever that you encounter, we can also assist you with that. And that is it for me, Michael.
Thanks, Andres. Appreciate that. So you guys all pretty much, it's like you knew what questions were coming. I
was looking at the chat going.
There was two kind of late entries on the questions, and what I always tell folks too, and what I'll try to read off these, then we'll conclude our recording, and I'll hang on, and I'll invite our fellow state agencies to hang on for a few if anybody just wanted to talk, not on a recording for a minute about something. I'll hang for a few, but the one question here asked about their tax exempt and paying taxes to BGE. How do they get refunded? Is there a number of years limit? I don't know if you guys can kind of instruct on that at all, but the question was asked, so I figured I'd throw it out there. It says we are exempt of paying taxes to BGE. How do we get refunded? Guessing you got to reach out to BGE, right? If it's related to having that tax exemption for sales and use tax.
I see some questions on the chat. Michael, I don't know if you want me to answer it or type it in.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to shout it out, go ahead. I think that might be easier than typing it in.
So the question for Mercedes, my SUTEC will expire in 2027. When will I have to reapply? In May 2027, the Comptroller's office, we're going to be sending letters out to all those active nonprofit organizations they've been registered with us, letting them know that it's time for renewal. And we will be asking you a few questions and few documentation to be prepared, and then you will be replying to that letter, but actually going by the website and doing the renewal process when we open. So the letter will be sent out in May, and we expect to open for renewal in June of 2027. So by September, you have your, or by October 1st of 2027, you have your SUTEC certificate in hand.
Excellent. Thank you guys.
You're welcome, Mr.
Great. Thanks again. Shanika, Martin, thanks again. Really appreciate you spending some time here, folks, and just wrapping up on the recording part. Thanks for joining us. This recording is going to get posted on that main charity page of the Secretary of State website. Usually within a week or so, we'll have that recording available. If you missed something, you want to go back and rehear something, it'll be there to watch as many times as you like once it's posted. Just remember, content is for informational purposes only. It's not intended to be legal advice. If you have questions, I know Andres threw his email for sutec@marylandtaxes.gov in the chat. I'm going to throw mine, dlcharity_SOS@maryland.gov in the chat. Hit us up at those email addresses if you have a question, especially if it's a question specific to your organization and your specific situation. I always encourage folks to ask that offline. And I say that because some of the details related to you may be related different details to others. And so if you have a very specific question, reach out to us offline at the contact information we provided so that we can help you out with your specific scenario, which may or may not be true for everybody else that's here. So thanks for joining us today. That's going to conclude our
Michael, I have there's one question in the chat. I don't know if you want me to
go ahead.
Stacy, I see your question. You said that if we are sales and use tax exempt, that only refers to items we buy. The items we sell and charge tax, we still have to pay sales and use tax. That is correct, as long as the money, that item that you sell or the proceeds doesn't go back into the nonprofit organization. If you're selling that as a side, and that proceed doesn't go back to the nonprofit, then yes, you're just supposed to pay sales tax on that and file the return. But now you have to open a sales and use tax account, which is totally different from the sales and use tax exemption. So it's two different things. So that's what I wanted to emphasize here, that whatever you do as a nonprofit organization stays on nonprofit organization, whether you buy or sell, as long as the proceeds for selling stays on the nonprofit organization for the mission that you're doing.
Thanks for clarifying that. Right at the buzzer, Stacy. Good question, Andres. Thanks for finding that and answering that. So we'll settle up here. Thank you all for joining us today. Thanks